Words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither widely as they slip away across the universe. That's awful. Almost as awful as that cover. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
I was going to say still better than the version on the album. There's your sneak preview, everybody.
Thanks.
It's setting the bar low, my friend.
Oh, gee, thanks. Hey, guys, how you doing? Andy and Bobby are back. We were just saying before we started recording, we're in really goofy moods today.
Yeah, and we're both drinking beer, so we're being naughty.
Hey, why don't you share with the listeners what beer you're drinking?
I've got a Sarnac, so it's an IPA, and it's a blood orange wheat. It's pretty good.
Okay. I am drinking a Sam Adams Winter Lager. Not one of my favorites by Sam Adams. It's good. But yeah, not one of my favorites. But yeah, no, that was very anticlimactic. I apologize. I've got nothing more to add to that. Hey, buddy. Listen. I've got a short little segment that I purposely didn't tell you about prior that I would like to introduce. Maybe it'll be an ongoing thing. Maybe it'll just be this episode. I don't know, but you want to know what it's called?
Yes.
This segment is called Did Rob Do His Homework?
Oh, boy.
And my question to you is...
My answer is no.
Did you... You couldn't even let me ask the question.
Go ahead. No, answer the question. Go ahead.
Did you do your homework from last episode?
Okay, now what was the homework?
That was going to be my next question. Do you remember what the homework was?
Go ahead.
He does not. That's okay. Your homework was to check out and it wasn't even, by the way, last episode, Diamond Dogs, phenomenal episode. Your homework wasn't even related to Diamond Dogs, but we talked about Beck, and we read that Beck covered the title track, which I have since listened to, but I asked you to check out his cover of Sound and Vision.
Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Yes, I did.
Well, I'm going to listen to that in the background while we record, and...
No, don't do that. Listen to it later. You gotta experience that. Listen to it. So good. Don't play it as background noise. Don't do that.
I'm sorry. I messed up. I feel bad. I should have done my homework. Well, I quit.
Can we get off mic for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Hey, listen. I know the times are rough, but when you're assigned homework, you gotta do homework.
Oh yeah, I forgot that you're a teacher. Get out of here.
Well, when you do get a chance, please check that out. I gotta tell you really quick before we get started.
And actually, real quick, I legit do want to check out the Rebel version from the reality tour. I did not forget that. I just haven't got a chance. That was my other homework. I did remember. Okay, I promise you, audience, that I will have listened to that. I'll give a full report on the next episode, the Sound of It Vision episode. So, not Sound of Vision, Jesus, station to station. Okay, anyway.
So you got to listen to Beck's cover, Sound and Vision, and you got to listen to the reality tour version, live version of Rebel.
All right, will do. I'll have that done by the next episode.
I will believe it when I see it. I will say that I did listen to Beck's cover, Diamond Dogs, and I gotta tell you, it was pretty good.
Was it?
Beck's an interesting dude. He's a guy I've been meaning to check more out. I've listened to a couple of his records. Sea Change is like his, pretty well-known one. And then some other one he put out early in his career in the 90s that was like demo stuff. Whatever. This isn't a Beck podcast. But he like the man that we're talking about. It's kind of a guy that was always all over the place, still is. So I like his Sound and Vision cover, which is pretty true to the original song, but adds the orchestral element. This is very electronic, and of the time when the cover came out, the early 2000s. But I got to tell you, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. It was definitely a really cool take on that song. Do I like it as much as the original? Absolutely not. But it was definitely a neat cover. Like I said, very, very much in the vein of the style of Beck and of the times. But it was cool. I dug it. So I would recommend that as well.
You're hard-pressed to find a cover version that's better than the original. The only one that even comes to mind would be like All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix. But
yeah, there are very few. Hey, that's a podcast idea. Yeah. There you go.
Oh, cover songs. See, we got too many ideas, not enough time, my friend.
Not enough time. But hey, enough is enough. No more talking about time because we've got another thing that we got to do. We need to talk about today's record.
And episode 8 of our Bowie discography discussion.
I think it's episode 9, my friend.
It's episode 8.
No.
Then did I get this wrong? Did I have this wrong
hold
on the YouTube page?
Hold on. David Bowie, Space Oddity, Man Who Sold the World, Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, Diamond. Oh. You're right, my friend. It's episode 8.
Yep. Woo!
Apologies. I digress.
Apologize everybody else for the silliness that's been the last 5 minutes. Record number 8, Young Americans. Let's do this.
So, what we're going to do, and I think we teased this in the last episode, is we are not only going to talk about Young Americans, but we are going to also talk about the Gauster. For those of you that are not familiar with the Gauster was the first draft, if you will, of what eventually became Young Americans. There is some crossover. There are 3 tracks, I believe. No, 4 tracks. 4 tracks. Yes, 4 tracks that were intended for the Gauster that ended up on Young Americans. And even though the Gauster would have technically fallen before Young Americans, we're going to talk about it more after we get through Young Americans. So what we're going to do today is, as we're going through each track off Young Americans, we will mention if they are on the Gauster or not, give our opinions as we go, if we like the Young Americans or the Gauster versions better. Then when we wrap up Young Americans, we will discuss the remaining tracks that were on the Gauster, would have been on the Gauster, that were not on Young Americans.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Maybe we could just give the track listing of the Gauster, and then just talk after we talk about this album, and then just talk about the new tracks that aren't on Young Americans. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Young Americans is album number 9. Now, hold on a second. How is it we have the 9th studio album, but this is episode...
They're counting pinups.
Oh, pinups. That makes sense.
I think they're counting pinups. That's my guess.
That would make sense. Okay. Thank you for answering my question. Young Americans is studio album number 9 by English musician David Bowie, released on March the 7th, 1975 through RCA Records. This album marked the departure from glam rock style of Bowie's previous albums, showcasing more of his interest in soul and R&B music, which was slightly introduced on Diamond Dogs. Bowie would call this album the Plastic Soul Record, describing it as the squashed remains of ethnic music as it is survived in the ages of, ready for this, Muzak rock.
Oh my god.
The initial recordings were done in Philadelphia with producer Tony Visconti and a variety of musicians. Some great David Bowie personnel are debuted on this record. I don't want to steal your thunder because you'll introduce that, but some of my all-time favorite Bowie musicians, both studio and later live, debuted on this record, including Carlos Alomar and Luther Vandross. But there's also this guy. You may have heard of him. You may have not. He's on a couple tracks. His name is... Let me make sure I'm saying this right. John Lennon? You know him. He's from a little band called the Beatles. I don't see the charting information. Oh, I'm slacking off.
The chart, it went to number 9 on the Billboard 200, number 2 on the UK charts, and pretty much was in like the top 10 everywhere else except for like Japan, France, and Canada. So it did pretty well.
All right. Well, thank you for stealing my thunder. No, I'm kidding.
I'm sorry. I just had it right in front of me.
No, it's okay. Like we said, guys, apologies because we are in extremely goofy moods today. How about you give us the musicians, the players, and then we'll get started.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of people that played on this album. The main personnel is, of course, Mr. Bowie on vocals, guitar, and keyboards, Carlos Alomar on guitars, Mike Garson, the great Mike Garson returning from Diamond Dogs on piano, David Sanborn on saxophone, Willie Weeks on bass guitar, Andy Newark on drums, and Earl Slick on guitar. Then some of the additional musicians we have is Larry Washington on the conga, love the conga, Pablo Rosario on percussion, and he only played on the last 2 songs, or no, not the last 2, Across the Universe and Fame. As you said, Mr. Lennon was on there. He did vocals, guitar, and backing vocals. Oh God, I'm gonna keep naming them. Let's see: Luther Vandross backing vocals, Robin Clark backing vocals. A lot of backup singers on this album. Amir Kassan on bass guitar on Across the Universe and Fame. There's a couple guys who only played on Across the Universe and Fame randomly. So that's him, Dennis Davis on drums, Ralph McDonald on percussion, Gene Feinberg on backing vocals, and Gene Millington on backing vocals. There's a ton of musicians on this album.
There really are, and while we went on and talked about our mutual love for the great Mick Ronson and how detrimental he was during his time in Bowie's career, I have to point out both Carlos Alomar, is it Alomar? It's Alomar, I believe, and Earl Slick. These two guys they couldn't be any opposite in terms of guitar players and their background. While Carlos is more of a funky guitar player, Earl's very rock and roll. And the duality of their two guitar playing, if you will, both on this record and the next one, is absolutely incredible. The contrast within each other, the contrast within their playing. I am really silly today. It's extraordinary. It really is. Carlos Alomar would go on to play with Bowie on the Berlin stuff well through the 80s, and then Earl Slick would be on and off throughout the years. He appears later on Outside, Earthling, that stuff. But on this record and Station to Station, I think those are the only 2 albums that they both play together. It's incredible. It really is. Yeah. And then as far as Luther Vandross goes, the backing vocalist, he was really detrimental on this particular record as well. We'll talk about that more as we get through each track or some of the tracks. But he was another guy. He would go on to do his own thing too.
Yeah, I've heard he had a pretty big solo career, right?
Yeah, he did. Well, after this record. But okay, yeah. So that's.
And I wanted to mention something else. I recall a long time ago reading about or seeing like a documentary about John Lennon. Didn't he join Bowie on this during the time that him and Yoko weren't together? Because weren't they not together for a little while?
Yeah, that would have been during the Lost Weekend. Yeah. And he actually, and we'll talk about that with some of the tracks, he joined towards the very end of the Young American sessions. His 2 songs, Bowie added because, of course, it was Lennon, but the stuff that he took out, well, we'll get into it when we get into the tracks, but yeah, Lennon's contributions were literally at the very end of Young Americans. But yeah, that was right around the time him and Yoko were separated, otherwise known as the Lost Weekend. But all right, let's get into it. Like I said before, we're gonna go through the whole entire Young Americans record first. We'll point out which songs also would have been on the Gauster, and then we'll cover the rest of the Gauster after. Starting with track 1, side 1, the title track, Young Americans. Here's the thing about this song. I think it's a killer opener. And I don't want to say I've always had a love-hate relationship with this song, but this is a very goofy song. A lot of problems that I have with this record as a whole are most prominent on the title track, and that's just how dated it sounds, specifically the saxophone. My God, the saxophone. And I don't think it's Bowie that plays sax on this record. I could be...
No, it was
I have it right in front of me, David Sanborn.
Yeah.
But my God, has it not aged well? There are other things too that I don't think have really aged well either. That was something that we talked about throughout some of the last few records. I think an album like Diamond Dogs, Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust, even Aladdin Sane, they sound so fresh, absolutely hunky-dory, absolutely sound like they could have been released today. I can't say that with a good portion of this record. And like I said, the title track really, for me at least, really kind of exemplifies that, more so than any other track. Like I said, specifically that sax. But I still really like this song. Bowie's vocals are killer, especially at the end, that falsetto. Ugh, so good. But yeah, I don't know. Not a favorite of mine. What do you think?
Okay, I gotta try to be as gentle on this song as possible. But yeah, anyway. So here's the thing about this song. I think it's a classic. I think that it's a really well-written song. I'm just personally sick of it.
Okay, fair enough.
So maybe it's not so gentle at all. Like it's a good song. Like I can see how it's a hit, but it just, like, I've heard it, like, even back in the day when I first discovered Bowie, this was always a song that, like, after a few listens I would skip. So, and it's just over the years been played so much on the radio, and I've just heard it so much that I just, for me personally, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I skipped this song every time I listened to this record except for the first time. Like, in preparation for this. I'm so sick of this song that I just kind of, like, yeah, like I said, I think objectively speaking, it's a good song. Like, the lyrics are interesting. It's got a good hook and all that, but I totally agree with you when you say that it kind of has a dated sound. It doesn't hold up to other stuff, like even earlier stuff like, I'm thinking of other hits of his, Life on Mars,
Sure,
Changes,
a song like Space Oddity.
Space
absolutely
Oddity
holds up better than this song.
I'm also personally not a big fan of the backup vocals.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. I'm just not really the biggest fan of it on this song. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of a goofy tune. It's also like probably 3 minutes longer than it should be.
There are a couple tracks that are on especially for this record and its sound.
Yeah.
There are a couple tracks that I would agree with are a little too long. Maybe shed 30 seconds, 1 minute. This one I want to go as far as saying 3 minutes per se. Maybe like a minute. Most.
That is my personal feelings aside. I think it's objectively a good song. Like I said, I think there's a reason it's a hit. I think I could see why a song like this, even though I would say I like a song. We talked about Panic in Detroit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know I keep going back to that one. Panic in Detroit, for example, like I kind of don't understand how that one was really a hit. I can see why Young Americans was a hit, but I kind of like I like Panic in Detroit better than the song. I'm just sick of this tune. But
I would agree with you there. I also like Panic in Detroit better than Young Americans. So I think that's interesting because I think we both seem to have the same feelings about it, but for different reasons, slightly different reasons.
Yeah,
we both acknowledge that.
I think for me, it's mostly it being overplayed, But it's also just, and I'm just gonna be straight up with you with this whole album. This style isn't really my thing either.
Okay.
But I'll let you finish your thoughts. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that we both acknowledge that it's a good song. It meets all the check marks for being a hit single, especially in 1975.
Yes.
Whereas I feel it's just a little dated sounding. you're straight up sick and tired of hearing the song, which is totally fair. Not a point I can even argue. One other snippet I wanted to point out before we move on to track 2 is I downloaded last night actually the ebook version of the complete David Bowie by Nicholas Pegg, and I haven't started reading it yet, other than I've been reading up on the songs on this record and the Gauster. And first of all, I kid you not, this book covers every song. Unreleased stuff, a song that he might have covered once at a concert. Like, that's how thorough this book is. And one of the interesting things I learned about this track is, I don't know if you're familiar with who Gauster Dorsey is, but she would have been the right around the 90s. I think she debuted on, it was either Black Tie, White Noise, or Outside, one of the two. But she was the bassist for Bowie's studio and live band, as well as the backing vocalist. So she did backup vocals for Under Pressure, you name it, every song she did backup for. But she not only cited Young Americans as her favorite David Bowie record, but she always said that she wished she got to sing this song. Bowie, interesting enough, retired Young Americans after the Sound and Vision tour in 1990. So she, I guess, always wished that he had brought it back in the in his set lists, and that she had gotten to be the one to sing. And I think it would have been a cool take if you're familiar with her singing style. She would have been suited perfectly for this record, but I think she probably would have been a child when this album came out. But I thought that was an interesting snippet.
That is interesting, yeah.
The other thing is, this song does appear on the Gauster track listing, and it is the only one out of the 4, at least to my ears, no difference whatsoever. I think the one on the Gauster might be 3 seconds longer or something like that, but there is at least nothing I can hear or have read up on. There are no differences between the two versions.
So so for me then, if the one on the Gauster is 30 seconds longer, I like the Young Americans version better.
Oh, no, 3 seconds longer. Did I say 30 seconds? 3 seconds longer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, you must have said 3. Yeah, well, then I still like the Young Americans.
Well, okay, then. I think we need to move on to this, to the song. So, track 2, not only is my favorite song off the record, it's always been one of my favorite David Bowie songs, and that's When. I love this song. I think this song is, to me, this song and one other track off the Gauster, in my opinion, really capture what he was trying to go for on this album successfully. Because there are quite a bit of dud moments on this album that we'll get to. I love the lush string arrangements that open up the song, but also play throughout the track.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's my favorite part of the song. Yeah, it's fantastic.
But it sets an atmosphere to this track that is just beautiful, quite frankly. That I think is the highlight. The other highlight is that climax at the end. The all you got to do. Oh, it's so good. I will say this album has some of his best vocal performances, and this song is one of those songs that showcases that. Another interesting thing. Speaking of Beck, apparently Beck's covered this song too, so I got to check that out. I've heard a couple of covers of this song actually that I like. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Kozilek from Sun Kil Moon, but he covered this song on one of his solo records, and it's phenomenal. But I just think this track is amazing. What's your opinion on it?
I'll say that I really didn't like it at first. I got to be honest, but it was actually again today. I was listening to it, and I was listening on headphones, and like you said, those string arrangements really got to me, and I also agree today. I definitely noticed, particularly some of the vocals on this track I liked a lot, and then I went ahead and listened to I think there's a version on the Gauster, right?
Nope.
I'm thinking of this song. Sorry?
Nope. The song was not on the Gauster.
Oh, well, there was one on the version of the Gauster that I listened to. Real quick, I just want to pull it up. But anyway, I like this version the best. And, I will say, like I said, at first I really just didn't like it very much, but I think this was kind of my grower as far as, like,
cool, okay,
songs on this album go. But it's kind of funny. I have to admit that I kind of thought it was like, it sounds kind of more like easy listening in a way, and I didn't really. Yeah, I was right. Yep, there's a version of this on the Gauster.
You're gonna have to send that to me because
this playlist anyway. It's not.
Yeah, because not to cut you off, but because when this is, and we're gonna talk about this. When is one of the tracks that was actually recorded later, closer to what eventually became Young Americans.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So, well, there's a version. Okay, so to clarify for the audience here, so when I originally looked for the Gauster on Spotify, I found two separate playlists which had different track listings, and we went through the playlist, and there was like a couple of extra tracks on it. So. And yeah, Win was one of them, so I'll have to send you that.
Yeah, please do. That. I mean, I can't help but wonder if maybe that person just made a playlist consisting of songs of that era. But I guess we can talk about that really quick. I won't get into the Gauster track listing yet. But the 4 songs that didn't appear on the Gauster because they weren't recorded yet, written or recorded, I should say, were Win, Fascination, which is the next track, the Across the Universe cover, and Fame.
Okay.
So yeah, please send me that because I'm curious. I got to do some additional investigative work, but
I will. It sounded different to me, but I hope I'm not confusing the song with something else. But there is a different. I looked at the playlist and Win is on it. So
okay. Yeah.
But yeah. My point is, anyway, sorry for the sidetrack there. At first, this was definitely my grower, because at first I really didn't think I really liked it very much. And then, again, man, this is why you got to always listen to an album with headphones before you make a final judgment on it. Today, I was listening to it, and I was like, wow, actually, I actually really am coming around to this song. So I have to admit that I probably will need to listen to this one a little more, but this potentially is a grower for me, for sure. But yeah. I guess we'll see.
Okay, fair enough. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad at least it's growing on you, because, like I said, it's one of my favorite David Bowie tracks, and I think, I think maybe while compared to everything prior to it, maybe maybe it doesn't offer anything like whoa, like genre bending or anything like that. But there's just something about this track. It's I think its simplicity is what makes it special, at least for me. But let's go ahead and move on to track 3. This one's actually my other favorite track off the record. That's Fascination. This is without a doubt the funkiest track off the record. That Carlos, man, that opening riff, fantastic. Luther Vandross shines on this song too, his backing vocals. This song really wasn't played live that much. As a matter of fact, Bowie wanted to pull this one for his Live Aid performance. And at the last minute, the song was opted out in favor of Modern Love, not because of Bowie, but because, well, you got to figure Live Aid was 1985. Modern Love was a really big single in the 80s. I think Let's Dance had only come out a couple years prior to Live Aid. There were a lot of big singles off that record. So, from that point of view, it's like, are we going to play this song or are we going to play this 10-year-old song? So whatever, but regardless, I think this is another incredible track. It's it's another one of the songs where it might not be anything extraordinary, but it's just a fun song. That in that sense kind of predates a record like Let's Dance. And
I could see that. I could totally see that. Yeah.
Right, and that's further down the road. But I mean, some of those singles, man, are just great for what they are. Modern Love, China Girl, the title track, right? So in that sense, I think this song sort of predates that Bowie. But what are your thoughts on this one?
We're in total agreement on Fascination. Actually, it's probably my favorite track on the album. It kind of stuck out to me immediately. And yeah, I would like I said, it's a fun song. It's funky. I might not like it as much as you. I still don't find it to me, it really doesn't touch anything. It doesn't really get close to anything from for example, Diamond Dogs or most of the other records and some of my favorite songs from those records that we've talked about already. But it's still really fun. A fun track. It's catchy. Like I said, this one, it wasn't a grower at all for me. I love the hook. I actually like I know I was complaining about the backing vocals, but I actually really like the backing vocals in this song. And the way Bowie sings it, he just sounds so cool, I don't know. I just like his vocal and the way he delivers the song.
I said, I think, and Bowie's always had this, in my opinion, this level of swagger to his vocals, which, interesting enough, he never liked his own vocals. But I really do think this record has some of his best vocal performances, and this is another song, a different side, say, than his vocal performance on Win, but still a phenomenal performance.
Yeah, it sounds to me. I really like this song a lot. Like I said, definitely my favorite off the album, I would say.
Awesome. So now that we're coming off, like I said, in my opinion, the two best tracks off the album, this is where it kind of starts to dip for me.
Oh God, yeah.
And that's track 4, starting with track 4, Right, closes side 1. I will say Right has become a grower. There's a lot in this song that I truly admire. Again, we're talking about the vocals. The complexity in both Bowie's vocals as well as the backing vocals are, to me, quite extraordinary. And as a result of that, this is one of the very few David Bowie songs that was never performed live for that exact reason. Like I said, it's the track that's growing for me, but this is where I get to already and getting to the point in the record where I'm like, I'm over this. I will say, and I'll get into it on some of the later tracks. This is another song that's also on the Gauster, and this song really has a wall of sound, you know what I mean? And I'm drawing a blank on his name. What's his name? He's in jail now. really well-known producer in the 60s. Basically was Brian Wilson's idol. I can't think of his name. That's really going to bother me. But he came up with the wall of sound. And it's never been one of my favorite production techniques, say, minus the Beach Boys. He produced Let It Be. I can't think of his name. But anyways, it works on this song. I actually do prefer this version to the Gauster version. Really, the differences with this and the other two tracks that are on the Gauster, minus Young Americans, because we said those are identical, is the Gauster versions are more stripped down. This song works in that wall of sound style. So for that, I can admire it. But beyond that, I think it's just an okay track.
Yeah, I would... oh, man. This is totally where the album dips for me. I'll be honest with you, I listen to this a lot at work, and like today I was listening to it, and this is right where the album starts, like my mind starts to wander. And when my mind starts to wander and I'm not focusing on the song, that's when I'm knowing I'm not enjoying it, you know? Yeah, I don't mean to be harsh. It's just, I think honestly part of the problem is I'm not super, like I love soul music, but it doesn't, I don't think it suits Bowie as well as, I guess, Bowie. We know Bowie was he's always called the chameleon, right? I mean, he can kind of he's known for being able to kind of weave in between all of these different styles and genres and what's popular at the time. And I don't think soul is his strong suit, in my opinion. And this one again, kind of with the sax and stuff, sounds kind of dated, and it's just kind of like it just comes off kind of boring, you know? It's not terrible. I wouldn't say any of this album is terrible. It's just very unremarkable for the most part.
It's very the good majority of this record is very one-dimensional, and I think you said it
bland. Really... Yeah, it's not. And my big problem, I don't know. My big problem with Right is just kind of, this is really where, because like you were saying, Young Americans, I get it. It's the hit. It's at one time I would have been like, yeah, that's a highlight, and even now it's like it's at least got that familiarity. Can't say the word today. Familiarity. But and then Win, like you said, to me that's kind of growing. It's become a good track. Fascination is kind of the peak, and then really it just, to me, as far as, you know, especially for the first side, this is the low point. It just starts to, I don't know, it just doesn't do anything for me. So
I think we're overall on the same page with this one, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm just not really feeling it. Same with the next track, which, if you don't mind me transitioning into it, Somebody Up There Likes Me. This is probably... Oh, wait, I just saw the track after that. Okay, this is also not one of my very favorites either.
Yeah, this is where, again, my problem, I guess really our mutual problem with that sax. Saxophone's very prominent in this song. Mm-hmm. Yikes. This one's also off the Gauster. This one I do think is better off the Gauster. I think the in its more stripped down form, it does make the track a little more bearable.
Yes, I think I like the Gauster version better too. I like the stripped down version, because this one kind of has, this version kind of has like an easy listening sort of, like, I don't know, sound, and I don't know, it's just, anyway, go ahead.
I agree. I think in addition to the saxophone on this song, as well as other songs off this record, where this one sticks out for me, in addition to the sax, is that god-awful synthesizer. That synthesizer was dated in 1975. Let alone in 2020. It's awful. It really is. And then mix that in with the saxophone. Oh boy.
I feel like with this song, Bowie was like, I need to figure out how to get my songs played in an elevator.
Well said.
It's also, this song is too long. It's almost 7 minutes long. Like,
this would be one I would agree with you. Maybe I would even say more than 3 minutes. Maybe cut 4 minutes off.
There's a song on the Gauster that I would put on, that I would replace this song with.
Ooh, save it, because we're going to talk about that.
I'll save it till when we get to the unique tracks from that album. But yeah, this one's too long, and like I said, it just comes. It sounds kind of, it's dated. It reminds me of like kind of easy listening sort of music, elevator music. It was just kind of again, it's not like. I'll say this about the whole record: the bands, or the band members, the musicians are solid. They know what they're doing. I think Bowie's vocals, he has some good moments in this album, but it's just the music itself and the songs aren't very, they're unremarkable. In some ways, bland is worse than bad, because at least sometimes when something's so bad, it can at least you can listen to it ironically, or you know what I mean. There's some stuff that's so bad that people will defend it just because it's so hated on. And there's just something about songs, or like tracks like this, and unfortunately a lot of other ones like this album, where it's just kind of bland, and you're just kind of like, everybody's just, to me, it's just, I felt very indifferent when listening to the whole album, so.
The one positive thing I will say about this track is there was I came across it on YouTube. There was a early version, like even earlier than the Gauster version, had a different title and everything, called "I Am Divine." It was in demo form, but I think that might have been the superior version of this track. You definitely hear elements of where it was, going to be. You hear elements of what the final product was, if you will. But that might be the best version. I don't think it's a bad song. I think you said it perfectly. It's bland. It's just this is where the record really becomes bland.
You know what I wish Bowie had done? I wish Bowie had Bowified. That's my new word for it. My new term. I wish he had Bowified the soul sound a little more. Make it more his own. Where I feel like in a sense, especially in this song, he kind of is like it just doesn't sound like he's doing anything exciting with it. It just sounds like Bowie singing, R&B soul.
I'm gonna slightly disagree with that and actually say there is one song that I think he does Bowify this sound. We'll get there.
I mean specifically this song. I was talking about there. Yeah, but and I would say Fascination he Bowifies it a little bit, but I'm here. I'll be curious to hear what you say about that actually. So go ahead. Sorry.
All right, no, that's okay. Because we're not there yet, but we will get there. All right, so let's move on. Here we go. Track 6, Across the Universe.
Can we just do what I did when I was listening to this album and just skip it?
Here's the thing. I want to hold my rant until we get to the Gauster, but it blows. I know we said we were going to watch the language, but it blows my fucking mind that this song was included as opposed to 2 tracks that we're not gonna mention yet that were on the Gauster. Why? Other than John Lennon, why? But hold on. Here's the kicker. John Lennon liked this version. Lennon felt that this was always one of his favorite songs that he wrote, but he didn't like his version. Hold on. We're still not done yet. It gets even better than that. Bowie agreed. Not only did he agree, and something I forgot to mention before, Bowie's ego, and normally this is not an egotistical person, or he wasn't known to be one, and I think a lot of that was fueled with the drugs, but his ego during this era was off the charts. Interviews that I've read with him promoting this record, I want to punch the guy in the face. That's just how high his ego was during this time. He thought that this record was the best thing he put out in his career. Again, cocaine. But not only did Bowie agree with Lennon, but he felt that his version, while acknowledging the fans did not like it, hammered the hell out of it. Let me tell you something. This is garbage. I don't care what the man himself, who is my 3rd favorite musical artist of all time, says. The only thing that is worse than this god-awful cover of a classic song is an even more classic song that he covers later that we'll get to several records down the road, is his cover of God Only Knows. That might be the only thing worse than this Across the Universe cover.
That was a lovely rant. That kind of blows my mind. Well, first of all, to your point about John Lennon liking it, he also thought Yoko Ono was a good singer. So we have so the man, as much of a genius as the man was, his opinion on other musicians isn't necessarily solid.
Fair enough.
I just didn't like this track, man. His vocals are terrible. I could only listen to it once or twice, and I was, I was listening to it with my wife. She's like, please turn that one off. I was like, yeah, no problem. It was just, and that's because, and I like, despite what Mr. Lennon says about his own song, I love the Beatles version, like the original version of Across the Universe. It's one of my favorite Beatles songs.
Oh, absolutely. Look, there's 9 bajillion recorded versions of just the Beatles version of Across the Universe, but
yeah,
that song's incredible. Calm down, Mr.
Oh,
Lennon.
yeah, absolutely. And like, similar to what you said, Bowie was in my top 10 favorite bands and artists, and I love the man. I love a lot of what he's done, and we talked about during this when we kind of touched on pinups a little bit in the Aladdin Sane episode. Covers are not his strong suit.
No, they're not.
He's good at injecting his sound or his style and sound into a genre or whatever, what have you. But he's not necessarily the best at covering other people's songs, I think.
No, he's not. There's definitely exceptions. I think you said it well. With some of the other tracks that, like, you wish they were more Bowified. I like that term, by the way. Bowified doesn't work with other artists' songs. Like I said, there's exceptions. I really like they're live, but I really liked both his Pink Floyd covers with David Gilmour on that one album. I really like his cover of Waterloo Sunset. That I think appeared as a bonus track off Reality. I like his cover of Wake Up by Arcade Fire. He did that with the band. So like there are some really good covers that he's done, but the majority of them are not good.
I actually think this is a song he could have done well, though. They fumbled the ball on it, and it baffles my mind to hear that John Lennon approved and thought it was like the best version of it. I'm like, yeah.
I think there are just other Beatles songs that would have been more well suited for Bowie.
I also think they were both really high when they.
Well, again, between Bowie being coked out of his mind since Diamond Dogs, and then Lennon on the Lost Weekend, you better damn well believe they were both high as a kite.
All right, let's move on.
Track 7. Can You Hear Me? I actually do like this song quite a bit. Interesting enough, it was originally meant to appear on Diamond Dogs. At the time, he did feel it just didn't work with where he was going off that record, which I agree, of course.
I agree, too.
I do like the Gauster version better. I think, like Somebody Up There Likes Me, the more stripped down, none of that wall of sound garbage, really suits this song very well. I really like the Gauster version quite a bit.
I'd have to agree with you, by the way. Yeah, I really don't care for this version of the song at all. Again, it's also, just too long. It's like 5 minutes long. I'm looking at the track listing right now.
Both versions are too long. I think the track lengths are relatively the same. I would maybe trim.
Right, but I like the stripped down sound better.
It does work really well.
Yeah.
The Gauster version. What I also really like about this song is that it sort of has like this like majestic ballady quality to it that sort of foreshadows a couple tracks off Station to Station. I'm thinking of songs specifically like Word on a Wing and even his amazing cover of Wild as the Wind. I kind of get that vibe off this track. There's a terrible live performance of this song that he did with Cher. It's god-awful.
Another thing I will say, I do like Mike Garson's piano as well.
Oh, but wow. We have not really talked about that man very much.
Yeah, he does, like, he still shines. He's like one of the few high points of this record, in my opinion.
Mike Garson, and that's the thing with Mike Garson, and that's why post Spiders from Mars, that's why he kept Mike Garson, because although he wasn't in the original Spiders from Mars band, he does play on Aladdin Sane. So after Bowie kicked everybody out, including Mick Ronson, he kept Mike Garson, because the thing with Mike Garson is Mike Garson was like destined to play for David Bowie, because we always joke that he was like a chameleon. Mike Garson's, he can just adapt to different styles of music. We talked about the supposed different takes of Aladdin Sane, how he did a bluesy version, and he did also I don't remember if it was like a country version, and of course, the version we know is like very jazzy. But he's well equipped. Like, he's really, in the truest sense, a studio musician. He's well equipped and he can just adapt to different styles. It's almost like the man was just, his sole purpose was to play with David Bowie. Anyways, what are your thoughts on this one? I know you said you do like it, but
I pretty much said it. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really a big fan of the song at all. Like I said, the one thing I'll say about it is I do like Mike Carson's piano in it. I agree that I like the stripped down version of the Gauster version, and it's just too long of a song, and it just to me it kind of sounds similar to some of the other tracks we talked about, like Right and Somebody Up There Likes Me. It's just like, I honestly, man, I like, to be fair, and I'll get more into this when we do our roundup of the album. I think I just this whole sound for me just doesn't really do much for me. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of out of my wheelhouse. So it's just, again, for me, just a very average track. Like I said, the highlight probably being the piano. That's about it.
Okay. Well, then that brings us to track 6, which is our closing track.
You guys might have heard this one.
You might have heard of this little ditty, Fame. Look, I think Fame's an incredible song. This is the song to me that I was saying earlier that really, when you had said you didn't think, soul and Bowie meshed well together, this is the song that came to mind. I think this is the song, and I wish we got more of it throughout this record. Mm-hmm. This is the song, what was it? He labeled it as plastic soul, right? His mm-hmm. The Bowie definition of soul and funk music. Mm-hmm. This is the song that exemplifies that. This is the track to me that is the Bowified.
It was properly Bowified.
Properly Bowified. This is the Bowified Bowie's take on soul, and it is fucking incredible. From the beginning of that riff to his vocals throughout. Lennon being on I can't talk. Lennon singing backing vocals on a non-Beatles track, by the way. Lennon's the one that does all the higher vocals throughout. This song is perfect. Everything about it is perfect. From, again, the vocals, I think the lyrics are great. Supposedly this song is about Bowie's frustrations with his management at the time around Diamond Dogs, but also a conversation that him and Lennon literally had about fame, the pros and cons of fames, that we all want to be famous, but then once we get it, we don't want it anymore. We long to have this, privacy in our lives because we don't have that anymore. I especially kind of going off the title track, this is everything that Young Americans is not. This is a song, while sure overplayed, whenever I hear it, I crank it. This song never gets old to me.
So I agree with everything you said about the song, except for the very last part.
I kind of had a feeling.
And just that I have heard, again, this has just been, and I will tell you, unlike Young Americans, this was one, like, I can echo the exact same sentiments as you with this song. I loved the song. I think love this song, but it's lost a little of its luster over the years. It just kind of sucks it's been overplayed so much, and part of that was, back in the day, I think I overplayed it too much too. Okay. That's my only issue with it. Everything else you said about it, I completely agree with. It's a really well-written song. I still even love the fame. That part's great. Again, instrumentals are great. Awesome hook. I love Lennon's contribution. If you really listen, that's the best part about this song, in my opinion. If you really listen, you can catch Lennon. You can really isolate him.
Absolutely, because
and that's fun.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say absolutely. To go off that. In addition to this being clearly Bowie, clearly being his take on soul, Lennon brings this psychedelic psychedelic vibe to it, especially the part you were just mentioning, the fame. It almost reminds me of contemporary soul music. Like, it reminds me of guys like D'Angelo and even more contemporary Frank Ocean, Childish Gambino a little bit. Like this song could be released today. Because that's the direction a lot of funk and soul music has taken. It's got this like psychedelic twist to it. A lot of it's pretty good. It really is. But this song almost predates that specific style of soul music, and I think that comes from, like you said, that's Lennon's contribution for sure.
I agree. I think you said it beautifully. I really don't have anything else to add to it. Like I said, I would totally agree with that. It's just a bit overplayed for me, but it's still a really good song. It's still well written. And to also echo what you kind of said, I really wish that there was more of this. The album as a whole was more of that. That sound, whatever, that kind of style that he captured there. Like, I wish he had taken that a little further and, been a bit less formulaic with some of the other songs, because some of them do sound a bit too much the same.
And I think, again, I can't help but wonder if part of that was Lennon, because this and Across the Universe were recorded the same day during the same session, well towards the end of Young American. So it's almost like Bowie came to a fully realized sound with where he wanted to go on this record with Fame.
It would have been cool if it would have been really interesting to see what would happen if Lennon jumped on board in the beginning,
Sure.
And he was just like, hey, let's do this record together. I think you got some good ideas, but I could add some stuff to it, and it would have been really interesting to see what they could have come up with. That isn't to say that there aren't some good tracks here. We mentioned a few of them, but yeah, Fame still is probably the highlight of the record, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Other than I would also add for me personally, Fascination and Win as well.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just gonna wrap up. So let's do this. Let's give our final thoughts on Young Americans. We'll do our top 3 tracks, and then we'll get into the Gauster. And then maybe what we can do after the Gauster is we'll do an overall top 3 amongst both records, because I'll be interested to see if that would change when just ranking the Young American songs versus everything in this time period. So I guess I'll go first. So you kind of started to, I forget what song it was earlier that you were talking about, but you kind of started to summarize my thought on this. I agree with you in the sense that this record is very one-dimensional. I think it was a record that he very much needed to do. We talked about how Diamond Dogs was a transitional record, and I almost want to retract that statement, and I think really this was the transitional record. Because we mentioned in the Diamond Dogs episode that he dabbles in this style of music on that record, but that record was still very David Bowie, and it worked. And this also works on Station to Station. It's almost like Station to Station, he perfected this sound. Station to Station is really what I think the point you were trying to make, is this style of music, your one thing is it wasn't Bowified enough. I think he does that with Station to Station, in addition to other styles of music that he started getting into shortly after this record. So I think this sound really works well, both on Diamond Dogs and Station to Station, because it's not one-dimensional sounding like it is here. There are absolutely highlights, and the highlights are big for me, specifically in the vocal department and in the songwriting department, quite frankly. For that alone, and I don't want to use the word dip, because I would almost put I would rank Young Americans almost around the same place as where I would rank, and that could change, Space Oddity and Man Who Sold the World. Difference being is from start to finish, those are better records. They cohesively work better, but the songwriting has become a lot better, and I think the songwriting outshines those two records. And maybe some of the songwriting on some of his, other classic albums that came prior to this. So for that, I gotta give this record points in that department, vocals and songwriting. If I were to rate it overall, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Let's hear your final thoughts.
You wrapped it up pretty nicely. So first of all, I had texted you when we were talking about this episode, and you were saying you were looking forward to it. And I thought that you were going to like it more than you do, because I was like, wow, we may have very different opinions on this one. Yeah, my final thoughts are pretty simple. I mean, I think I would also agree with quite a bit of what you said there. What do I want to say here? Okay, so first of all, I'm just going to say it. This is, to me, the weakest album since the debut. It's definitely better than the debut. Like, it's leagues better than the debut. And I would agree with you that the songwriting has gotten better. It's just that, to me, and I don't want to get into my thoughts on the next record we're going to do, because that's for the next episode, but particularly between what I think are two really great albums, and one of which being my favorite Bowie album, it's got that problem where it's just wedged between two far superior records, in my opinion. And the other thing that
the Obscured by Clouds effect.
Yeah, right. That's a very good analogy there. Yeah, the Obscured by Clouds effect. Totally. And like you said, I can appreciate where he was going with this record. I can appreciate the fact that it's a transitional record. I don't think it's a terrible record. I might rank it a little lower than you, maybe like a 5 out of 10 or something like that. But I gotta say, most of the record really didn't do anything for me. And the problem that I have, too, is that even the two hits, particularly Young Americans, less so with Fame, because I can still enjoy Fame, I've just heard so much and got overplayed that it kind of even sucks the enjoyment out of that a little bit. But that being said, there's been a few other tracks that I've enjoyed, and a few off the Gauster as well. And it's a little unfortunate to me, because like I said, this is one of those records that I'm really wasn't as familiar with, and I thought maybe that my hopes were, I think, a bit higher than, how I actually ended up, in my opinion, feeling about the record as a whole. Particularly because there are, especially with like Across the Universe, there's like one or two real turds on this one. But yeah, I don't know. Overall, I don't want to be too brutal to the record, but I'll say that overall, even the musical style of it, part of it could be just, it's not my thing. And I like old soul. I like, R&B, that kind of stuff. But the stuff I like for the most part, is stuff like the Marvin Gayes, the Isaac Hayes, those classic...
Righteous Brothers, sure.
Yeah, you name it. Those classic, for the most part, black artists who cultivated that sound. So, to me, it just doesn't work too much with Bowie, except I agree, I will take back what I said and agree that had he went the direction that Fame kind of touched upon, I think I would have really enjoyed this album a lot more. But yeah, overall, it just doesn't really didn't do much for me, and I would say is quite neutral, kind of boring, unremarkable, unfortunately. I hate saying that about a Bowie record, but it's definitely my least favorite so far, aside from the debut. And to be fair to it, too, I mean, it had to follow the lineup of Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, Aladdin Sane, right, Diamond Dogs, yeah. And then what follows it? Station to Station, Low,
Berlin Trilogy,
Heroes, So it's just in a very unfortunate position in terms of the chronology of his albums. So, and yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much else to say. I think you covered a lot. Anything else that I would have said?
So it seems like this might be the most controversial thus far, and I use that term loosely because I really do think that we seem to be on the same page with this record. Overall, we seem to share the same opinions. Difference being is I tolerate it more than you. Would that be fair to say?
I would say that's fair. I would also say, and I've noticed this consistently throughout this series of doing this, I think you and I like this for the most part, by and large. I mean, 9 times out of 10. There's a few exceptions that I like, tiny little exceptions that I can think of. I think we both look for the same thing in Bowie music. I think we both appreciate the same kind of thing in Bowie music. You know, particularly, I mean, even look at Diamond Dogs. Our top 3 tracks were, I think, identical. Aladdin Sane, a lot of the same tracks that you enjoyed, I enjoyed. I like that. I don't know how to describe it. Like, there's this quality that Bowie has sometimes to his songs where he makes something, he does something so different and makes something so his own. And some of these tracks, you know, I think of a track like Aladdin Sane or something like Moonage Daydream or something, or Sweet Thing we talked about. They have this atmosphere, this otherworldly quality to them that I really just love so much in Bowie music, and that's unfortunately largely absent in this record. And that's, I think, one of my biggest issues with it. He went a little too
this was really his first true attempt of consciously becoming mainstream. Because I think after that, he puts that on hold for almost for another 10 years. Because by all means, the next 5 records, I mean, you know, Station to Station had hits, but the next 5 records, I don't think consciously he was going for a mainstream direction. But this would truly be the first record where he was consciously going for that. I agree. I think we do absolutely look for, like, we look for the same things in Bowie. Having said that, I'm interested to see if that maintains as we get through the next few records, because I'll just say it right now, pretty much the next 5 albums that we're gonna talk about are more or less my favorite David Bowie albums.
Well, this is gonna be interesting, definitely interesting indeed, because I am more familiar with Station to Station than, like, for example, this record, and even something like Aladdin Sane, actually. So it'll be very interesting, first of all, for me to re-listen to that record, because it's been a few years, and also just to hear your thoughts on it. So
it's my favorite David Bowie album, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And like I said, the ones that come after are amongst my favorites. So
it's funny that, kind of, for lack of a better term, a clunker is the wedge between my favorite David Bowie album and your favorite David Bowie album.
That's true. I didn't think of that. Let's give our top 3, and then we'll talk about a couple singles really quick, and then we'll get into the Gauster.
Okay, yep.
My top 3 would be in order: Win, Fascination, Fame.
Wow, so Win is your favorite?
Yep.
Wow, okay. We're almost there. We have the same 3 tracks again, but mine would be Fascination, Fame, Win.
Okay.
Yep. But we'll see how that changes, because I think Win might be a grower for me. We'll see.
Win's one of my favorite David Bowie songs. It always has been. So I hope that it grows on you too. As far as singles go, in the UK, Young Americans was released as a single, with the B-side being Suffragette City. It is a live version. I don't know which live version it is. If I had to guess, probably the David live version. Yeah, I know. In the US, it was also released as a single, with his Knock on Wood cover being the B-side, also a live version. Again, probably the David live version. Fame was also released as a single, with Right being the B-side. And then later on, not really later on, like a year later, Can You Hear Me, was released as a B-side, with its A-side being Golden Years. Couple tracks that would have been recorded, whether officially released or not, I want to quickly mention. There's a song called After Today. It's on the Sound and Vision box set. I love it. It's Bowie emulating disco, and we got to keep in mind this is 1975, so this would have been right around the time, maybe slightly before disco really hit big. I think it could have worked on Young Americans, and I think it's better than easily half the tracks off that record. So I would check that out. That song's called After Today. It's on the Sound and Vision box set. Mm-hmm. And there's another song two songs actually I wanted to make note of. One's called Laser. There's different variants of it. The one I want to quickly talk about is spelled Lazer. I believe it was originally recorded around Diamond Dogs, and then again during Young Americans. Later on, it would become a song called I Am a Laser, and then the final version would be Scream Like a Baby, which is off of Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. The Lazer, Lazer, version of this track is pretty neat. It's in the vein of Diamond Dogs and Young Americans. It's in demo form. You can find it on YouTube. It's well worth checking out. And then the other song that I actually found recorded together with Lazer is a song called Shilling the Rubes. This song is awesome. This was, again, it's in demo form. I don't know if it was, I think it was meant to be on Young Americans. It didn't make the cutting floor, of course. Also really good. Better than the majority of the tracks off the album. So I would recommend checking those two tracks out. Lazer and Shilling the Rubes. Shilling the Rubes especially is really good. And we also have, what is it called? I didn't write it down. That Bruce Springsteen cover too. You had said it earlier. Why can't I think of it? No. Oh, It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City. That's also on the Sound and Vision box set. I don't know again if that was meant to be on Young Americans. It's okay. Again, it's just another David Bowie cover, but that was recorded around this period.
It was okay. It was randomly on that version of the Gauster.
On the version that you pulled up, okay.
It had all those extra tracks. It was weird.
Well, speaking of the Gauster, let's talk about that. And then we'll wrap this thing up. So like I said at the beginning of the episode, the Gauster was a rough draft of what became Young Americans. Bowie was writing and recording during the Philly Dogs tour, which was the American leg of the Diamond Dogs tour. I think we might have briefly touched on that when we talked about Cracked Actor in the last episode, because one or two songs that would have been on the Gauster, he did perform on that album, which would have been on the Philly Dogs tour. So this would have been 1974. He had, he was working with Tony Visconti. Tony Visconti also produced Young Americans, but he pretty much he didn't scrap the album, but he put it on hold, and then revisited some of the songs during the Young American sessions, as four of them do appear on the final version. Ironically enough, minus the 3 tracks that didn't make Young Americans, we said throughout discussing Young Americans that it was very bland, and believe it or not, the Gauster, had it been released, would have been blander. And ironically enough, that's why Bowie pretty much scrapped the project. If you have the 2016 Who Can I Be Now box set, which includes David Live, Diamond Dogs, Young Americans, Station to Station, it also includes Bowie's handwritten track list of the Gauster, which is the following songs: John, I'm Only Dancing Again, Somebody Up There Likes Me, It's Gonna Be Me, Who Can I Be Now, Can You Hear Me, Young Americans, and Right. That's the supposed track listing. Now, some of the other songs that I mentioned before, After Today, supposedly were intended for the Gauster. Same thing with It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City, the Springsteen cover. Supposedly those were intended to be on the Gauster. We don't know that for sure, but what we do know is the 7 songs that I just mentioned, were absolutely meant to be on the Gauster.
Can I say something just very quick?
Go for it.
I think the song I was thinking of before in the beginning of the episode was Right. I don't think it was Win, by the way. I think that's what I my
that would make more sense because there are two versions. I was gonna say I've not heard another version of Win.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, and my brain did a oopsie. So anyway, go ahead.
No worries. So 3 of those songs we're gonna talk about because the other 4 are on Young Americans. And as we mentioned before, very subtle differences. The 2 versions of Young Americans, identical. And then the other 3, really just the Gauster versions, are more stripped down. Like I said, 2 of them I prefer in their stripped down form versus the Young American versions. But these 3 tracks I really want to talk about because why the fuck were they not on the final product? So, we'll start with John, I'm Only Dancing Again. By the way, not related to John Lennon. I've been vocal about this song in the past as saying it's not one of my favorites, but amongst the Bowie fan base, it's a really popular song. This song has really grown on me, and I think that started with the Cracked Actor version. If you remember in the last episode, I did point out that I really liked the live version. And since, preparing for Young Americans and the Gauster, this song has continued to really grow on me. This is a re-recorded version of the 1972 version that didn't make it onto the Ziggy Stardust album. Difference being is the verses. So the chorus is the same. And the main riff is the same. It's a little more, funky, if you will. But the verses are completely revamped.
It's funny that both this didn't make it on Young Americans and the original didn't make it on the Ziggy Stardust.
This... I get why it didn't make Ziggy Stardust. I still don't care for the original version. This should have absolutely been on Young Americans. I would... almost, this might be a bold statement, I would almost replace this with the title track altogether.
So this is the track that I was talking that I would put in the album, and then I would have taken off which song was it we were talking about? What the hell? The first song off of side 2. What the hell was it?
Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Thank you.
Which is interesting enough. Track 2 off the Gauster.
This is the song that I would have put in its place.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, I agree. It should have just been on the album. I would absolutely take it over Somebody Up There Likes Me, but I almost, this really would have been a great opener. It really would have. And I mean, look, Young Americans is a great opener too, but I think this song would have really mirrored Fame very well. So Fame is a phenomenal closer. Fame is very upbeat and funky, just like John, I'm Only Dancing Again. I think that would have worked really well. This was the opener of Young Americans, and then you have Fame as the closer. I don't know, that's just me. I think they're very similar tracks. I love the jam session towards the end of the song. I would maybe trim a minute off. It's still on the lengthy side. It's like close to 7 minutes, but I dig it too. It doesn't bother me at the same time.
I really liked this song. Like I said, I would again, echoing kind of what you're saying, I would totally put this on Young Americans. In fact, I would honestly consider putting this and the other 2 tracks over. What do we have here? Right? We have, let's see, let's go back here. I would put it over Right. I'd put it over Somebody Up There Likes Me, and I would definitely put it over Across the Universe.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And unless if you had more to add to John, I'm Only Dancing Again.
Nope, I'm good.
I've been holding it for the whole episode. Both It's Gonna Be Me and Who Can I Be Now, in my opinion at least, along with Win, are the best songs during this period. I would go as far as to say that I think both these tracks are masterpieces. These two songs, when I first heard them a few years ago when I got this box set, why did Bowie remove these from the record? Who Can I Be Now specifically has been documented that was the song that Across the Universe replaced. Just let that settle in for a second. Both these tracks are incredible. It's Gonna Be Me kind of has a really early Tom Waits vibe that I just really dig. Actually, interesting enough, this Bowie book I was mentioning earlier in the episode even specifically identified this track as an overlooked masterpiece. And I agree. The choir is best utilized in this track than any song off Young Americans. And then in contrast with Mike Garson's piano, it chills every time I hear this song. There's supposedly an orchestrated version of this song that appeared on, I think it was the Rico disc version of Young Americans that would have been released in the early 90s. I haven't heard it. I don't see that improving this song. Like, I love this song as is. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I more or less feel the same way with Who Can I Be Now. I think Who Can I Be Now really does summarize this period. I think there's a little bit of irony in this song, in the sense of, self-identity and kind of struggling with that with this period, removing himself from the Ziggy Stardust persona, removing himself from having an alter ego in general. There's even the line in that track, "Now Can I Be Real?" And you didn't include it. This song, and then I want to hear your thoughts on both these tracks, because I know I just took over the reins here. The climax on this song, roughly around the 3.5 minute mark, is incredible. It is incredible. Between Bowie and the choir, it just builds and builds. It is beautiful. Why was this song not included on the album? Why?
Yeah.
I can't wrap my brain around it.
I'm just going to sum it up with a quote from Rick James. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. I don't really know what else I can add to it. I definitely liked these two. I think you might like both of these tracks more than me, but particularly Who Can I Be Now, I really liked. Like you said, the piano, Mike Garson. That is one thing that has come out of this whole series is I definitely have, first of all, reaffirmed my appreciation for Mick Ronson, but Mike Garson, man, he just kills on that track. Yeah, I agree. Why did they take those 3 songs on and add, or why did he not put those 3 songs on and add stuff like Across the Universe, I don't understand it.
All 3 of these tracks should have been on Young Americans, bottom line.
I totally agree. Now, here's a question for you, and you may have touched on this, so I apologize if I steal your thunder, but I want to ask you this specifically. If you were to do your own version of Young Americans, and you were to do a track listing of your own, how would you do it?
Well, it's funny you should say that. And while I don't have an answer for you right now, I was going to ask you during this recording, so I put you on the spot. I am in the midst of working on my own sequencing, using songs from the Gauster, Young Americans, as well as some of those other after-mentioned tracks that I would like, because I wasn't able to get it ready on time for this episode. That I would like to maybe share next episode.
Okay, cool. Well, then maybe what we'll do is we'll try to do that much like we did with if anybody tuned into our King Crimson series, we did that. We did that with The Perfect Beat, which was... so
does that mean you're going to do your own as well?
Yeah, so I'll try to do my own as well. And we'll try to sequence
big homework
the
assignment
album
for you.
Well, yeah, that's true. But what we'll try to do is we'll try to sort of reorder the album with songs in kind of the sequence that we would want them.
Okay.
So it should be interesting. We'll try to do that for the next episode, and then I'll post it on the YouTube page.
Perfect.
Cool.
So, unless if you had anything else to add,
that's it. I'm good, man.
That's all I have.
It's Young Americans and the Gauster, guys.
Young Americans and the Gauster. I know this one ended up being a wee bit longer than most of our David Bowie episodes. Rob and I just both really felt that, while not canonical, still an essential footnote in the man's career that really just needed to be slightly touched upon, especially those 3 after-mentioned tracks. John, I'm Only Dancing Again. It's Gonna Be Me, and Who Can I Be Now?
Well, we like to be thorough.
Well, that too. I can't wait for the next episode. Station to Station is my favorite David Bowie record. Even going through the rest of this discography, I don't see that changing. But I can't wait. That record's so good. But I can't wait to get to the next several David Bowie albums, to be honest with you.
Oh, honestly, me too, all the way. Honestly, I'm looking forward to every. Right now, before we go, I kind of want to see. I'm trying to go to his discography.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll babble on, because I just had an epiphany that really we're getting to my next 2 favorite Bowie records, because Low is my second favorite Bowie album, and that is right after Station to Station.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. What I was going to do was I was just going to, if you want to keep babbling, go ahead. I'm just trying to find his discography, because I was wondering how many studio albums are left. Let's see.
I don't have an exact number, but I can pretty much list them while you're looking that up. We've got Station.
I've already got it.
You got it. Okay, I'll just
I'm
go
sorry,
fuck myself. Never mind.
It's okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So first of all, the next 6 albums I'm really looking forward to, by the way. Those are the ones that we were, that I think you'd probably agree with me there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Only 18 more albums to go, my friend.
Ooh, that can't... Maybe that's right. Yeah, I guess that's got to be right. And that's assuming that you're not, of course, including the wrap-up episode, but that's also assuming you're not including Boot of Suburbia, you're not including any of the 80s soundtracks like Labyrinth, that's assuming you're not including the Tim Machine records.
His official discography shows from this point: Station to Station, Low, Heroes, Lodger, Scary Monsters, Let's Dance, Tonight, Never Let Me Down, Tin Machine 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that'll be one episode or what.
I'll just say already that should be one episode.
Okay. Black Tie, White Noise,
mm-hmm.
Outside, Earthling, Hours, Heathen, Reality, The Next Day, Black Star.
Okay, so that's not including Boot of Suburbia, which I think is worth doing. Maybe clumping that with Outside. No, Outside's gonna be a long episode. We'll have to talk, because I wonder if maybe doing a condensed episode with Labyrinth and what's that other one called? I'm drawing a blank. I don't know. We'll have to talk off mic. Not important right now. Either way, next episode, stay tuned. My favorite David Bowie record, Station to Station. We will also try to get our alternate versions of the Gauster / Young Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, the next episode of the actual podcast should be, we're going to do another album swap, right? We've got one of those.
Yes, there will be an album swap in between, and I don't think anything else, right? At the moment.
No, we don't have anything planned yet, but keep an eye out, because I think both of us are starting to, we were talking before the podcast, we're both kind of itching to do something else new at some point. So keep an eye out, see if, we haven't discussed anything concrete yet, but I don't know. I'm personally itching to do something that would be
I maybe shouldn't say this on mic, but I'm almost thinking after Station to Station, we might be due for another very short hiatus on the Bowie discography. Would you agree with that?
I think that would be a good place to do that, especially since then we're going to get into the Berlin trilogy, you know? And then if we're going to do it again, we'll do after the Berlin trilogy. You know what I'm saying? So those are good, like, kind of cutoff points to take a little break.
Perfect. So. You heard it, folks. Alrighty, man. This was fun. Check out Young Americans and the Gauster. Specifically, check out our recommendations.
Do it.
Otherwise, I think the silly, it's kind of, you know, I'm tired. I'm tired and I'm hungry.
I'm tired too. It was the beer.
Yeah, I had one last beer we both had.
It was the one beer. I had one last point I wanted to make very quick, and just that is we actually have a Twitter now. It'll be linked to the YouTube page, and it will also be linked to our Anchor page. So check that out.
Awesome, Twitter, and eventually we'll get to Facebook. Do check us out on YouTube, Sound of Music, Anchor, Spotify, Apple Music.
Everywhere
we are
podcasts
there.
Are available. Do it.
Finally.
And hopefully you're listening to us on it now. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.